What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder. This is going to be our breakdown for Daredevil Born Again episodes 5 and 6. And as always, we want to hear from you. What did you think of these two episodes? In my personal opinion, they were two of the best episodes that we've gotten so far. And I think that's saying something because this show has been amazing so far. But let us know your thoughts. How would you rate episodes 5 and 6? Now, this episode takes place on St. Paddy's Day, so it's very appropriate that it opens with some The Rocky Road to Dublin by the Young Dubliners, an Irish rock band. And this is a pretty big theme of the episode, the fact that this is falling on St. Paddy's Day, the robbers are Irish, and Matt Murdock is as well. After showing the masses in New York City celebrating St. Paddy's Day, we find Matt Murdock in a bank. Now, at the end of the last episode, episode 4, it really seemed like Matt Murdock came to terms with the fact that he's probably going to have to be Daredevil again. He ran into Frank Castle, the Punisher, who hit on a lot of his emotions. Primarily the one that he felt guilty because there's been no justice done for Foggy yet from Daredevil. The last episode was also about the system and how even when it works, sometimes it still fails, like with the murder of Hector Ayala from Dirty Cops, even after he won his court case. And that's really what Daredevil was. When the system failed, Daredevil didn't. However, this time, Daredevil has failed. He hasn't been back as Daredevil, so at the end of the last episode, he seemed to accept the fact that he was coming back. And when we start this episode, when he's in the bank, he has one of his horns from one of his cows in his hands, so he is still contemplating this decision. Everything that we've seen so far is him not wanting to come back as Daredevil, but he's starting to feel like he has to. Then the episode wastes no time and they bring in Yosef Khan, Kamala Khan, aka Miss Marvel's father. And they also don't waste any time mentioning her as well, as Yosef gets a call and he says, "It's my daughter, Kamala. She's visiting friends in California." And this is most likely Kamala Khan going to California to try and recruit Cassie Lang to be a part of the Young Avengers team. At the end of The Marvels, we saw Kamala Khan go to Kate Bishop. This was a very clear setup for the Young Avengers coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and in this scene, Kamala Khan also mentioned Ant-Man's daughter, Cassie Lang, and Ant-Man and Cassie live in California. So Kamala, aka Miss Marvel, has most likely gone to California with Kate Bishop to try and recruit Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man's daughter, to be a part of the Young Avengers. And recently, there was a page created for the Young Avengers / Champions show on IMDb. And according to a recent report from Nexus Point News, Rachna Frunchbaum has been tapped to write the series for the Young Avengers / Champions show that is going to come out on Disney+. The Young Avengers are also said to play a pretty decent sized role in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. So really big connections here. Now, Matt Murdock is originally there to see Mr. Aldridge, who is the bank manager. Yosef Khan is the assistant bank manager, and knowing this comes into play later on. Now, the two of them get talking about Jersey City, and Yosef takes the opportunity to brag about their very own superhero and his daughter, but no one else knows that, Miss Marvel. Now, Matt says that he's never heard of Miss Marvel, and Yosef pulls out a custom Funko Pop of Miss Marvel that they had made. He's trying to show it to Matt to brag about his daughter, but Matt can't see, and he reminds him of this. So after bragging to Matt about his daughter, Miss Marvel, he gets to business. Matt's law firm is looking for a loan so they can expand. And Yosef says that they're over leveraged, but they keep taking on clients who have a hard time paying. And this is where Matt really gets into a key part of who he is. He explains that when people from Hell's Kitchen from New York City need defense attorneys, a lot of them can't usually afford them, and it's usually David versus Goliath. And he brings it back to a key point of the last episode, the system. And he says the system is often against them. So that's why they do what they do, because the people need it. They are trying to do right by the people. And now more than ever, Matt is trying to believe that through his good work, he can actually use the system to do justice. But as this episode and next episode will show us, Daredevil has to come in to deliver that justice that he wants. Sadly, despite his pitch, the bank cannot lend him any money because they're overleveraged. But Kamala's father was at least nice about it, which Matt does acknowledge. So Matt temporarily leaves, and the bad guys show up. The bad guys show up and they are speaking in Irish accents, which tell us that they are Irish, and they also say that they are working for Luca, who Kingpin has recently said, through Buck, owes another crime family $1.8 million. So these guys are here for Luca to get the 1.8 that he owes. And the leader of this group here even says, "We get the 1.8 mil and that fat bastard Kingpin is off of Luca's back. So even though Kingpin hasn't directly sent these men here, it is still because of Kingpin that this group is here robbing the bank, which might come into play later if Matt finds out because of that diner conversation that they had in the first episode where Matt said, if I catch you doing anything illegal or not mayorally, I'm coming for you. So the robbers go in, start roughing people up, and Yosef Khan actually manages to sneak into one of the offices to try and call 911. Unfortunately, the robbers have cut all communications off. No security cameras work, Wi-Fi doesn't work, and the wired phone doesn't work either. You would think cell phones work, but one woman does say AT&T is the worst, implying that there is no cell phone service either, although it is revealed that this specific woman was in on the whole thing. But considering how no one else could use their phones to dial 911, it does seem like somehow the robbers managed to cut out the service. And it's actually only because Matt hears what is happening inside of the bank, the sound of the people screaming, the sounds of the guns. He hears this, he realizes that the bank is getting robbed, and he tells Kirsten to call 911. And as far as we're led to believe, that is actually the only reason the cops do know what's going on and show up. Meanwhile, Matt, who had just left the bank, is talking to Kirsten on the phone, and he says, yeah, it's another no, telling us that he's been to other banks and they have also told him no. So their firm can't seem to get a loan. And then of course he hears what's happening and he heads back to the bank. Now Matt uses his blindness as a way to kind of get back in the bank without it seeming suspicious. And it works. And they even call him Stevie Wonder, who of course is a very famous blind singer, songwriter, and musician. So Matt works his way in there and the robbers explain, hey, we are robbing this place. Don't try to do anything and get in our way and you'll be fine. We don't want to kill any of you, but these guns are very real, and if you get in our way, we will kill you. And when they say this, Matt steps in as a lawyer, and he explains that if they kill anybody, their charges go from armed robbery to felony murder, and they could do 25 years in jail to life. Now, Matt is telling them this because he doesn't want anybody to get hurt or killed. So he's trying to appeal to the logical side and the criminals. But of course, they don't care. They've been doing crime for a while. They work kind of indirectly for Kingpin, since Kingpin and Vanessa are in charge of all the families. They just want what's in the safe. So they are looking for the manager, Mr. Aldrich, who is not there, and that is the sole reason that Matt actually met with Kamala's father, Yosef, because Matt was originally supposed to meet with Aldrich. He was not there. So Yosef Khan, as the assistant manager, stepped in to meet with Matt, and now he is unfortunately in charge, and the one that the bank robbers are going to have to deal with. Now, the cops show up, and this was actually something that the criminals didn't foresee. Two of them go inside of a private office and say, somebody must have triggered the alarm before they got there. But like I mentioned before, that did not happen. Matt heard everything happening, he told Kirsten, and Kirsten called the cops for them. But the robbers say, it's okay, we'll just go to plan B. And notice that they refer to each other by the color of the mask that they are wearing. In the office, he says, you take the hostages, I'll handle the cops, and blue will go to the safe. So that's why they're all wearing different color masks, so they can refer to each other by their colors, not by their names, to give them away. That actually is pretty clever. Now, Matt is talking to Yusuf and he says, you can't open it, can you? And Yusuf says something that is honestly pretty real. He says, I can't, I panicked. I didn't know what to say, because he thought if he told him, no, I can't open the safe, then maybe he thought he would get shot. Maybe he would just kill him then and there. Also, if nobody who worked there could open the safe, maybe the criminals would kill everybody, all of the hostages. But Matt says it's fine and he has a plan. He asks him where the vault is because Matt already knows what he's going to do. He's going to ask basically to go use the bathroom, and then he has to know where to go. So 4 floors down. And that's why he tells Yosef to stall, because he knows eventually he'll get there. We then get properly introduced to Angie Kim. She was with Cherry in the very first episode in the bar when Bullseye attacked. She is now acting hostage negotiator, because the real hostage negotiator, Murphy, which is an Irish last name, is drunk because it's St. Paddy's Day, according to Detective Kim here. Now, when Kim gets on the phone with Green, the leader of the criminals wearing the green mask, he says you can just call him Jesse James. Jesse Woodson James was one of the most famous American outlaws ever. He robbed banks and trains. He was alive from 1847 to 1882. Obviously, Green is not going to tell her his real name, so he says, call me Jesse James, which is of course very fitting because he is robbing a bank. Now, he actually knows a decent amount of what she's gonna say, and she jokes that I didn't know they had the cops manual over in Belfast, Belfast being the capital city of Northern Ireland. Again, a lot of plays on the fact that it's St. Paddy's Day and they're Irish. Green asks for 3 armored APVs, which stands for all-purpose vehicle, basically meaning that it can drive on all terrains. Kim agrees, but says I need 2 hostages for good faith. So Green goes to choose hostages, and at first, they don't know what he's doing. He could be choosing 2 people to kill for all they know. So they're super nervous. He picks 1 woman and he picks Matt. But then of course he reveals that they are emancipated. He's going to let them go. The woman automatically starts saying, please let my husband come with me. And they did show that they just got married in the beginning of this episode. They did mention that. The husband, doing what he should, says, no, forget about me. Just go. You go. But Matt steps in and says he can take my spot. Now, of course, this is because Matt wants to stay inside. The last thing he wants is to leave the bank. He wants to stay inside and take out all the robbers. And in doing so, he pisses off Green even more. Matt says, just because I'm blind doesn't mean I want your sympathy. And that's how a lot of people who are impaired or disabled in some type of way do feel. But Green explains, I don't like you. I don't like your kind. And I believe he's referring to him being a lawyer here because he says, I don't like the way you twist the truth. I'm not really giving you a chance to leave. I'm getting rid of you because I don't like you. I don't want a blind person in here. That's a liability. But the sympathy kind of does play a little factor here because he asks him what's his name. He says Matt Murdock. He says, oh, you're Irish. Where are you from? Matt says Hell's Kitchen because that is where Matt's from. But Green says before the big swim, meaning before his family came over across seas from Ireland to the United States. But Matt explains, I don't know, I'm an orphan. So this kind of gives Green a good chuckle and I think does kind of play to the sympathy card just a little bit. But he ultimately decides Matt can stay and the woman and her husband can leave, which is exactly what Matt wanted. So Blue takes Yosef downstairs to the vault and Matt can hear the helicopters outside. And he gives a little smile because again, Matt really wants the system to work. He doesn't really want to have to be doing this himself, especially if it means him having to return as Daredevil. Now the hostages start talking and they say, what do they even want in the vault? There's nothing in the vault. There's no money. It's just safety deposit boxes. And one of the guys says that he's got a 1994 signed puck, hockey puck by Mark Messier, who was one of the greatest hockey players of all time. And in 1994, he won the Stanley Cup, scoring the game-winning goal in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. So he says it's probably the most valuable thing they have in there, and yeah, it would be pretty valuable. And as someone who's played hockey their entire life, I love this. But most importantly, this gets Matt thinking, what do they want in one of the safety deposit boxes if it's not money? And what's interesting is that the woman who is there says that they probably want a diamond, and that's exactly what they want, and she is actually in on the entire thing as they reveal at the end. In fact, Green actually gives her the diamond, so when she says they probably want a diamond, she's actually telling the truth because she knows what they're there for. So Matt convinces the robbers that he needs to go to the bathroom, so Red takes him down. While Matt is walking to the bathroom, he can hear Yosef stalling like he told him to, so he knows he only has a little bit of time before he has to get there to help him. He starts loosening his tie as he's walking to the bathroom, knowing that he is going to use his tie to help him fight. So Matt rips off his tie, attacks him with it, and eventually puts him to sleep while also catching a gun that was about to fall down the staircase that would alert the other people that something was going on. And notice in this moment right here, he takes off his mask, but he keeps it as well because when he goes to fight Green at the end, when he's dressed as a police officer, he puts on the red mask. So this is the moment where he got that. So Yosef stalls and Matt shows up right before the guy was about to shoot him, then delivers a really great impersonation of him to convince Green that everything is fine. It's going well. Yosef is opening the vault right now. Then Matt proceeds to try and open the vault. Yosef, of course, asks, what are you doing? And he says, we need to let them think that they're in control, which is actually what one of the robbers, Green, said to Agent Kim. It's a strategy that both are using right now. Yosef says there's over 100 million combinations, basically saying you're never going to guess this, dude, but Matt's not guessing. He's using his heightened senses to actually feel when he hits the combinations. And what's funny is they're having a conversation and Yosef once again brings up his daughter, Kamala Khan, aka Miss Marvel, and he's talking about parenting lessons, and he says as a parent, he tries to protect his daughter from things he can't see, but at the same time, Matt can't see, at least not with his eyes, but with his other senses, he sees things that other people don't, and that's why he's able to open the vault. When he opens it, Yosef says, exactly what kind of a lawyer are you? And Matt says, a really good one, which is very similar to what he told Spider-Man, or more specifically Peter Parker, when he was in No Way Home consulting him as his lawyer. Daredevil's senses went off as he caught the brick. Using his senses, of course, Peter thinks he's blind, which he is, so he confusingly asks, how'd you do that? And Matt replies, I'm a really good lawyer. Also, side note about that scene, Matt is also shocked by the fact that Peter raised his hand to catch the brick, as in Peter knew it was coming as well. So this might eventually lead to Matt Murdock knowing Peter Parker is Spider-Man down the road. We'll see. Now, once inside the vault, Yusuf explains how the safety deposit boxes work. The customer who owns the safety deposit box has one key and the bank has another. So that means they need a key for the specific safety deposit box the robbers are trying to access, and he ends up finding that on the one that he knocked out in front of the vault. Meanwhile, Green asks about the vehicles that are supposed to come for him, but Agent Kim says, look, it's St. Patty's Day. Getting them here is just going to take some more time. Green starts to mess with her, says, all right, fine, tell me a joke, and if you make me laugh, I'll extend the time before I kill one of the hostages. She does manage to make him laugh, but he only gives her 10 minutes before the first one dies, and Matt hears this. So Matt knows that they're running out of time, but at the same time, he knows that the cops are probably going to make a move soon as well. So he knows that he just needs to stall only for a little bit. In the vault, Yusuf actually asked Matt if it was true when he said he was an orphan, and this kind of touches on his origin as Daredevil a little bit. He says yes, his father died when he was very young, right after Matt's accident took place where he went blind. His father died not too long after that, being killed by a local gangster. Later on, we go on to find out that Sister Maggie, who was a nun at the church orphanage, who basically helped raise him, was actually Matthew's mother. But Matt never found that out until he was an adult in Daredevil on Netflix season 3, which is why he says, I never knew my mother until much later in life. Eventually, Yusuf opens it and they discover it's a big diamond. But Matt does mention that he heard them say they were working for somebody else. And I think this will actually come into play later when Matt figures out that they were there basically as a result of Kingpin being a crime boss again, which is going to make him go after Kingpin eventually. But again, Matt hears the police say that they're about to go in, so Matt knows he needs to go up and stall, and the diamond is the way to do that. So back upstairs, Matt tries to negotiate with Green. He says, you're out of time, they're about to come in. And he shows him the diamond and says, let everybody go, I'll give you the diamond. Everybody walks out just the way they want. But notice, Matt shows him the diamond that's not in the bag, and then when he says here, he just throws the bag. Little sleight of hand there, because as we go to find out, it was actually one of Yosef's candies that were in the bag, and he kept the diamond, of course. Now, when the cops come in, they smoke everything, but Matt uses his hearing to detect what's really going on. He hears Green go into one of the offices, he can tell that he changed clothes, and he can tell that he actually goes to one of the civilians and says, get this DeLuga. However, Matt doesn't really care about that part because he knows it's not the actual diamond. He has it on him, but what he wants is the leader. He hears him walk out and he fakes like he has an injury, telling the police that he needs to get to a medic so he can get out of the building. He does, and he hears the footsteps of Green, and notice when he takes apart his cane, this time he actually takes them fully apart. Normally they're connected by some type of a rope so he can keep it together, but this time he breaks it off so he can have one pole in each hand since they're not connected, and this is him basically making his own billy club since he doesn't have his on him. And from there he proceeds to just beat the absolute crap out of Green, including breaking his legs, which looks to be in multiple places. I love it. And then of course it ends back with him at the bank talking to Yusuf Khan, and it's funny because Yusuf says, hey, we still can't approve your loan even after you did help us all, but they do show us that a friendship has been formed. Matt says, I just came to check up on you. Yusuf says, you know, you could come over to my house for dinner and we can brainstorm on how to make your company more profitable. And of course, they have to mention Kamala Khan one more time, so Miss Marvel's on our minds. And with Matt yet doing another sleight of hand, he says, I actually am going to try one of these candies. And while he takes one out of the bowl, he seemingly placed the diamond in the bowl, which then Yusuf, of course, finds, leaving him with the thought that Matt had it, and he actually gave it back because he's a good guy. I wouldn't actually be surprised if this is setting up a team up between Miss Marvel and Daredevil one day down the line, with Yusuf actually knowing that Matt is Daredevil. After seeing this, I actually think that that would be kind of cool. But now we go into episode 6. Episode 6 starts off with the BB report. And usually when we see the BB report. It's about the state of New York City and its safety, and if vigilantes are helping or not. In this opening scene, we see a video of who the person refers to as Swordsman, and this person, we believe, is actually the character Swordsman, or Jack Duquesne, who we met in the Hawkeye series. He was the man who was dating Kate Bishop's mother, and he does actually appear later on in this episode. It seems like he is a vigilante out there fighting in the streets, trying to protect people, but more on that later. Then it opens up with a construction worker finding a dead body with their eyes plucked out. They then automatically go to a worker trying to get paint off of the wall, which is graffiti done by Muse. Now, Muse obviously killed this person that washed up along the shore, and he plucked his eyes out as well and did the mural, which says "Kiss Ass," and it shows Kingpin kissing the ass of a bull. But inside the bull is a dollar bill, meaning that Kingpin, in Muse's eyes, is doing all of this for the money. And what this really is setting up is Muse to come into play later on in the episode. Then we cut to a part that is really important for Matt's character and his personal struggle right now. He is praying, something that they have showed us he has not done for a very long time. And there's two really important things mentioned in his prayer. One line is, "Make us steadfast in the pursuit of justice." And that's all Matt is trying to do right now. Now, before, when the system didn't deliver justice, he did as Daredevil, but again, he's trying not to go there. And the other line is, "Confident that merciful justice through Christ the Lord lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit." So again, Matt is still trying to rely on justice, the justice of the system, not Daredevil, and he's trying to believe in mercy that the Lord has. But while he is saying this and thinking about it, he is looking at all of the bad things that have happened and the lack of mercy, like Foggy dying. So he's really struggling with his beliefs right now and struggling not to bring out Daredevil again to deliver that justice that the system does not provide. Now, when Heather says, "Oh, you're praying? You're still praying even after everything that happened?" Matt says, "Yeah, I like to check in." Meaning, even though his faith has been shaken, he still does believe. Then Heather starts talking about her next book, which is going to be about vigilantes and why people revere the masks of the superheroes, of the vigilantes. Posing the question, does the mask allow us to be our true selves, or does it strip away our identity and allow us to act as animals? A question that has been burning in Matt Murdock's head recently. So now Daredevil is bleeding into all of the parts of his life. He's trying not to let Daredevil return, but it seems inevitable to him, which is why Matt says, well, maybe both. Then she asks if Matt could set her up with an interview with the Punisher, and he laughs because obviously he knows Frank. He just saw Frank. Then she asks about Daredevil, which is obviously him. So now Daredevil is really bleeding into his personal life, and he's really starting to see there's no avoiding this. Meanwhile, Luca just barges in on Kingpin's mayoral office. Now, Luca is the boss from the previous episode. The reason that those people were there in the bank trying to rob it was to get money for Luca, to get that diamond. And they specifically said if they get that diamond, Kingpin gets off of Luca's back, but they failed, which is why Luca is now in the office of Kingpin, and he basically says, hey, I'm not paying the 1.8. Kingpin doesn't take kind to this and says, well, guess what? It's 2.8 now. I want $1 million myself. Luca obviously says, you're out of the game, don't return, but Kingpin's not as out as they would hope he would be, as we see in this episode. And this definitely gets under Kingpin's skin to be a part of the reason he does indeed end up returning as the crime boss Kingpin. Then Sheila brings in Johnny Santini, who was actually in the previous episode as one of the hostages at the bank. And he explains that the murals that are being painted across town by Muse are made out of blood. And this is what Muse does in the comics. He kills people, then he creates works of art with their blood. So they're being pretty comic accurate here. Meanwhile, Angela Ayala, who is the niece of Hector Ayala, or the White Tiger, goes to Matt's law firm to visit him, and she says that Hector was onto something. He was investigating the kidnappings that were taking place, and Hector would want somebody to finish his work. And this whole scene with Angela here is basically to again provoke Matt Murdock into coming back as Daredevil. And he even kind of fights back, going, what do you want me to do about it? I'm just a lawyer. Again, fighting back, saying, I'm not Daredevil anymore, in his mind, out loud saying, I'm just a lawyer, which is what he wants to be. But Angela says, do literally anything, telling him he's doing nothing. There's people being kidnapped and killed, and he's not doing anything about it. And to him, it's Daredevil is not doing anything about it. Matt tries to fight back even more and says, it's not that simple. But Angela comes back with, you know what Hector told me? Don't rely on anybody to do what you can do for yourself. And again, this goes back to the system. Matt, don't rely on the system to do what you can do as Daredevil. Deliver that justice as Daredevil. Meanwhile, Kingpin is having a meeting with the police and others about what to do about the murals. And they explain that over 60 people have been kidnapped and killed. And the police want to sound an alarm to try and scare him off. But Kingpin knows the mentality of somebody who does crime. And he says he may go away for a bit, but he's going to come back even harder. And since the police didn't figure this out, the sanitation department figured this out, Kingpin is essentially saying, I don't trust them. So it's time to switch things up, which we of course go on to find out Kingpin does. Now they do show us a brief scene of people recognizing Muse. They're showing us that he is becoming quite famous to New York City. He's kind of pointing out the evil people and he wants vigilante justice. But of course this scene shows us what he really is, a murderer, which we do see big time later on. Now Kingpin and Vanessa have a pretty intimate conversation, and this shows us that they are actually getting closer again even after all their problems. Kingpin explains that Luca went to his mayoral office and said he wasn't going to pay. Vanessa says, well, that's bold. And this part's important. Kingpin says, I added an extra $1 million to it. And then he laughs and he has a big smile on his face. This is Kingpin in his natural environment, being a crime boss, having the power. And as you can tell by the laugh and the smile, he loves it. And he's starting to hate everything that comes with being mayor, all of the red tape, all of the rules and guidelines that he has to follow. He hates not being able to just do things, which is why he loves this power side, the Kingpin side of himself. And in the scene, you can actually tell that Vanessa likes this as well, because that's what she was originally attracted to. And here Vanessa explains that tonight Mayor Fisk is asking New York's wealthiest people for money. And as she's speaking with Kingpin, they actually show us Kingpin talking to all these wealthy people. And we can see that they don't like Kingpin. Even as mayor, they can still see through him and they see the crime boss. And they don't like what he is doing right now as mayor. And they're pretty much saying, hey, you're only going to be mayor for a few years and then you're out. But then they show him talking to Jack Duquesne. And he says your obsession with changing the police and your obsession with vigilantes, it's not going to work. And it's not that you can't do it, you can, but it's going to piss everybody off. And he's kind of speaking for everybody, but also very personally, because it does seem like he is the vigilante swordsman, which again, he is in Marvel Comics. So he kind of doesn't like him for two reasons here. One is he's a vigilante and Kingpin is against vigilantes. But two, his former girlfriend, the mother of Kate Bishop, was working for Kingpin and she got into a bunch of trouble because of him. So he probably knows what Kingpin's up to as well, and I wouldn't actually be surprised if we saw him go up against Kingpin at some point in time as the swordsman. So as Kingpin talks to the people in this room, they're saying that, look, nothing gets done without us, and we don't like you. And Kingpin is once again just hating how it is to have to follow all these stupid procedures as mayor. And he's starting to wish that he could just do things the way he did it before, just strong-arming people. And this is a very important scene. As all of this happens, Vanessa puts on Kingpin's jacket and he rips it, and he explains that his clothes aren't really fitting anymore. This is because he is getting fatter. And Vincent D'Onofrio, who plays Kingpin, explained that as the show goes on, he does get fatter. A lot of people were wondering, dude, you lost so much weight to play Kingpin. Kingpin's supposed to be huge. What's the deal? He explained it's a part of the story. And I believe that it has to do with him letting go, one, of himself physically, but two, letting go of basically wanting to be a standing upright mayor and eventually reverting back to him being Kingpin. So him letting go of Mayor Fisk and really going back to Kingpin. We then go back to Matt at his law firm. Cherry comes in and Matt can hear his heartbeat racing, so he knows he has to tell him something important and or upsetting. Now his heart is racing because he doesn't want to tell Matt what he's about to tell him, that there's a serial killer on the loose and he's killed 60 plus people. He doesn't want to tell him because he doesn't want him to go out as Daredevil again. And he even tells Matt, please let this go, let the police deal with it, don't go out as Daredevil, is what he's saying. Meanwhile, Kingpin gets pulled away from the rich people telling him that they don't like him, where his team shows him Muse mocking the police. He did this with artwork that he's done with 2 women that he murdered. But instead of looking at this as a super bad thing, Kingpin says we can use this because that's what Kingpin does. So he meets with Chief Gallo and he says, look, you cut basically all our funding, our overtime, everything. This is kind of your fault. But Kingpin says, I care about the city, so we are gonna put more cops out there. And he assembled a personal task force. He picked out pretty much all the cops that have the Punisher logo on them. That's basically a badge that says, hey, I'm a dirty cop. And he basically says it's a gang inside of the police. And Chief Gallo even acknowledges this. These are the bad cops. And Kingpin basically says, exactly. That's exactly why I'm choosing them, because I'm gonna have them do some shady stuff. They'll get exemptions from things like wearing body cameras. That way no one can check the footage on what they do and how they do it. He's basically saying, I want them to be dirty. I want to use them for what they are. And Kingpin says he's going to be the one to personally oversee this task force. And when he meets with them, he gives a very inspiring speech that says, I don't think of you all as kind of crooked cops. I think of you all basically as people who have kind of had bad luck. Whether that's because you're a little overzealous or what it may be, Kingpin says, I view that as initiative. And Kingpin says, I want to use that. Sometimes when you got to get the job done, it requires some creative thinking. And I brought you here because of your skills, because of how you get things done. Basically telling them, I know what you are. I know you do things dirty. Do it. Do it in ways that cops aren't supposed to do it to get me the results. And to Kingpin's credit, he is trying to kill a serial killer, so he does believe that he is doing the right thing. At least at first, because he does deem them his anti-vigilante task force, and they show us Buck handing them vests, and they don't show what's on the vests. And they could be blank, we do see them being tossed around, but we do know that eventually they are going to spray paint the Punisher logo on them, and that's going to bring back Frank, and that's going to be a pretty big team up between Frank, the Punisher, and Daredevil. Because as we're about to see in this episode, Daredevil returns. He finds out that Angela Ayala took things into her own hands and she went looking for Muse. And Soledad Ayala ends up calling him, stating that she is missing. Angela is missing and it's really not like her. So he knows right away she went to look for Muse and Muse got her. But luckily he has been doing research based on what Cherry told him and what Angela told him, and he knows where to find Muse. And he's not about to let Angela die. Now at first he calls 911, but he realizes they're not going to get to her in time, so he says, literally, F it. I'm returning as Daredevil. That's the only way to save her. And he throws the piece of the horn that he's been carrying from his Daredevil cowl on top of Foggy's in memoriam card. And this goes back to what Frank was telling him, that he felt guilty because Daredevil never sought revenge for Foggy. So Matt says, F it, I'm doing it now. I don't care anymore. Now, at the same time, Kingpin has also said, F it, as we see him walking down the stairs to the basement where he keeps Adam, Vanessa's former lover, when Kingpin was gone, and he's walking down the stairs with an axe. As we see this, we see Muse take Angela back to his base, and he sets her up to take her blood out, and he starts to do so. But we'll cover one scene at a time here, so we'll start with Kingpin. He eventually makes his way down to Adam. Adam backs up away from the door because he notices that Kingpin is carrying an axe. Kingpin says, Vanessa would like me to let you go, but that's hard for me to do, and you and I are locked in together because we shared the same experience, that experience being Vanessa. And Kingpin can't allow this. Then Kingpin explains that when he was younger, he was smaller and bigger kids would pick on him, and he's saying this because he is much bigger than Adam. But he also says, I found that tools were an equalizer, basically saying that I could keep up with them and basically defend myself and beat them up with weapons. And he hands Adam the axe. Adam picks it up and he attacks Kingpin, and Kingpin just absolutely destroys him. He is infuriated with Adam and the affair that Vanessa had with him. Again, what I said before when he was starting to let himself go. Here he fully lets go. The anger takes over him and he just goes crazy, and he even yells, mine, as in Vanessa is mine. You're gonna die for touching what is mine. Then eventually he drags him back into the cell that he was keeping him in. He's not dead yet. We'll see if he dies. Meanwhile, Matt heads to Muse, and Muse has Angela set up to take all of her blood and kill her. But Muse hears something. A train goes by, and as it passes and fades away, he can see Daredevil running at him. Matt uses his billy club to grappling towards him, and we get an absolutely epic fight. And the entire time they're fighting, Matt is monitoring Angela's heart rate to make sure she doesn't die. He knocks down Muse and goes over to Angela to try and disconnect her, so the device stops taking her blood. But Muse comes back at him and knocks him down, and Muse actually goes to kill Angela with a knife, but Daredevil uses his billy club to stop him. And from there you can tell that Matt has fully let go of Matt Murdock, and he is now Daredevil. He walks at Muse, he lets him kick him. He knows that he's gonna get him. He knows that no matter what Muse does in this moment, he is going to take him out and save Angela. He is back as Daredevil, and we see him just yell into the air because even though he's back, he's not exactly too happy about it, but he lets it all out. He even starts to hang Muse by his neck, and if it wasn't for him having to save Angela, he might have let him die. But he hears Angela's heartbeat slowing, and he goes, and luckily, he's able to save her. He pumps blood back into her heart, and it starts up again. Also, while he does this, he says the same prayer that he said before. And this is fully marking the complete return of the Matt Murdock / Daredevil that we knew before, that we've known all this time through the Netflix series. A Matt who is Catholic and religious and believes that Daredevil can deal out that justice that the system can't. And at the same time that Angela comes back and Daredevil is standing over her, Kingpin is sitting in the cell where he's holding Adam. And in this moment, Kingpin realizes he's back as Kingpin. No more holding back, no more Mayor Fisk who plays by the rules, but from here on out, it's Kingpin time. And at the exact same time, Daredevil realizes that Muse is gone, and Angela calls out to him, Daredevil, and he says, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here, signaling that he is back. And that's Daredevil Born Again, episodes 5 and 6, two of my favorite episodes so far. Please go ahead and let us know what your favorites are in the comments down below. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our Daredevil Born Again breakdowns, plus all the other Marvel videos that we do as well. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.